Retired four-star General Michael Hayden was director of the National Security Agency from 1999 to 2005. Then he led the CIA from 2006 to 2009. General Hayden, good morning.
Morning.
Good to have you here. Let's start first with the very latest information. We've reported that Turkish officials believe one of the attackers is Chechen and that the others are from Central Asia. Right. Why is that significant?
Well, it just shows the international draw that ISIS has been able to achieve. And that's not the first time we've seen it. We've known those kinds of attackers, like Europeans, like some North Americans, have been drawn into the conflict. So the fact that they were used for this particular attack, interesting, not surprising, well below shocking. Interesting, though, because their presence there actually is one of the legitimate reasons that Vladimir Putin has Russian military forces in this fight. I think he's got a bunch of other reasons, but this one, because these
worries about Chechens.
He worries about Chechens and Dagestanis and other South Asians in the post-Soviet space when they're done here, going home and presenting a genuine threat to Russia.
So, having said that, what do you make of the sort of coming together of Vladimir Putin and Erdogan?
Yeah, and actually seems to have been in trail before this attack, that they wanted to get over the shoot down of the Russian aircraft. In fact, President Erdogan out and out apologized for the shooting down of the aircraft. Look, Erdogan's looking for friends. He, at one point just a few months ago, Charlie, he had awful relationships with every country that bordered Turkey. It was terribly isolated, and frankly, a lot of that was his fault. He's carried out a very erratic foreign policy.
Established.
You realize almost at the
Israel.
same time, yeah, exactly, he goes back and mends ties with Israel. So I think you get a sense that Erdogan believes he's kind of hit rock bottom in terms of the neighborhood and needs to start rebuilding.
Will any of this have an impact on Syria?
Oh, in terms of the success of the attack? Yeah. Sure. I mean, ISIS is looking for wins. Look, these guys get to recruit because they believe they are and look like they're carrying out the will of God, and they are the hand of God. It's their mojo. And they've been denied local battlefield victories as the allies have gotten stronger. And frankly, we've done some of the things that a few folks like me have been calling for several years in terms of plussing up our presence, our firepower, loosening the rules of engagement. So now, in order to keep that kind of jihadi mojo going, they need to show some wins. Otherwise, they don't look like they're the hand of God. And they're happy enough to take wins outside of the theater of conflict.
I'm curious about your first thoughts when you heard about the attack in Turkey, which was considered a stable part of the world. That, of course, is no longer the case. When you first saw it and the way it was carried out, what were your thoughts on what we need to do here?
Here in the United States. Yeah, because I heard John Brennan's comments that, hey, this could happen here. And of course, look, we have feared that happening here since Thanksgiving Eve in 2008, as we're all preparing for dinner, and we're watching that magnificent Taj Hotel aflame in Mumbai, in India.
Why do you think it hasn't happened?
Well, we're actually pretty good at this. Our security services are very aggressive. Well, we've got geography. We're just further away from the problem. But Charlie, the more these attacks become self-generated, you know, we're really good at stopping the complicated, slow-moving, multi-part attack that gets hatched here and then has to get exported into the U.S. Frankly, I don't think those are going to succeed. The last example of that was probably 2009 with the underwear bomber. What we're getting now are attacks that just pop up here. So all that infrastructure we've built to kind of control the midfield, we've got to keep doing it. But it's not relevant to stopping this.
There's the old maxim that we have to be right 100% of the time,
sure.
And they only have to be right one time.
Okay, so Charlie, there's another corollary to that. That's true, and that's going to happen. And so now we, as an adult nation, when it happens, I'll use a metaphor for soccer, when that penalty kick, which is pretty much what this is, goes into the back of the net, we don't need to fire the coach, sell the team, and get rid of the goalie. In other words, we should not immediately jump to the conclusion that this was a failure that then requires a restructuring of what it is we have been doing. We actually, a great fear we had was we had the ability to take a tactical defeat over here on our part, and by the way we responded, turn it into a strategic success for al-Qaeda. And let me just be political for a second. Some of the language that Mr. Trump has used after the attack has taken some things were bad, don't get me wrong, but in essence were a tactical success for our enemy, but in the language he has used to describe them, he has elevated them to this realm where they can claim strategic success.
And he's saying we need to go back to waterboarding, too.
He has said that. I have said we're not going to do that, and that is not disowning what the agency did before. But the law has changed, and frankly, the agency feels betrayed by the broader political structure, having done something they thought the broader political structure wanted done, and then found out back here that, well, not so much. So I don't think when John Brennan says they're not going to do it, Mike Hayden says they're going to do it. You ask George Tenet if the agency's ever going to do this again, and we all go, no, it's not. But that is not a disowning of what happened before.
So, but previously you have said on Spy Masters, a program that aired here on CBS and on Showtime, that the next president or the next CIA director will have to bring his own bucket if he's going to waterboard.
Right.
Are you saying that Trump will have to bring his own bucket?
Yeah, look, this is one of those instances. If coming out of the NSC meeting, it's look, we're kind of changing the game plan. We got the Attorney General to agree to an interpretation of the one law that does make it illegal, and we want you guys to go do this. At that point, the director is going to have to man up and simply say, for the protection of my officers, I'm afraid, Mr. President, I cannot direct that.
Which
We have seen
candidate
some
do you think
Republicans
is-
and also certainly some national security people say they cannot support Donald Trump
I am one of those.
Yeah,
because
What evidence I have of his thinking about foreign policy things suggests courses of action that I think would be destructive for our country, our allies, and the world. And I see no tacking back after having secured the nomination, no learning curve coming back with that was this, that was then,
does this
is now.
represent, in your judgment, the majority of opinion in the national security field?
It represents the majority of opinion in that part of the field that I communicate with.
All right. That was sort of the question. I wasn't asking that way. I was going to say, which candidate do you think is qualified from day one to be president of the United States when it comes to security? And you've answered
Well, look, let me make sure I don't overstate this, all right? I've already told you about the putative Republican nominee. I'm going to get to the Democrat nominee. In that lane that you and I have just been talking about, she's fine. And let me give you an additional thought. In many ways, in my view, in that lane, I think she might be a little stronger than the current president.
In terms of national security
That's the lane.
and preventing terrorism.
That's the lane. On the other hand, I got a whole bunch of stuff over here and a whole bunch of stuff over here that still has to legitimately influence my vote.
What concerns you about her?
It's stuff that has nothing to do with national security. A Supreme Court justice issue would be one thing that would come to mind. But in terms of national security, within the administration, Dave Petraeus, Liam Panetta pushed strongly for action, frankly, that doesn't fix this. But I don't think this problem is nearly as bad. Let me turn that on its head. What decision could we have made in 12, 13, and 14
In
that
Syria.
that you can tell me with any confidence would have made it worse than it is now?
You think
Well,
the
the president
inaction...
would say doing what was recommended would have made it worse. That's his opinion.
No, I realize that. And look how bad it is. I don't know. I'm having trouble defining worse.
It couldn't be worse than it is now.
Well,
Syria.
look, you've got the Russians in the Middle East for the first time in 50 years, Hezbollah in Iran in the ascendancy. You still have the slaughterhouse that is Syria. Bashar al-Assad is in less danger of falling now than he was 12 or 18 months ago. And because of our inability to contain this, we have destabilized Europe and caused the beginning of a dissolution of the European community. How's that for a national
One
interest?
quick question. In Israel, we've seen a lot of national security people, former Mossad directors and others come out with respect to current Israeli politics, as you know. Can you imagine that a lot of national security people, former CIA directors, NSA people, and others will step forward after the nominating conventions and make clear their views about
yes.
America's national security?
I do. All right. Once we have two clear nominees, a lot of people are going to be asked a lot of questions, and I think they're going to answer. They're going to answer very candidly. I don't know that you get to the Hank Paulson, Brent Scowcroft. I'm voting for the Democrat, but I do think you're going to get an awful lot of folks. I can't work over here.
Thank you, General.
Thank you very much, General Hayden. Good to have you at the table.